That police are questioning a group of people rescued from a shipping container at Tilbury Docks in Essex. One man died and 34 people needed hospital treatment. Many of them have now been transferred to immigration holding centres. Well, with me now is Saira Grant, who is Legal and Policy Director at the Joint Council for the Welfare of Immigrants. Thank you very much for joining us. These people were obviously in a pretty desperate situation, but presumably they could face some sort of legal proceedings, could be classed as illegal immigrants.
Well, that's right. They are here illegally. What is interesting is that the police have referred to them as victims. So this is likely to be a case of victims of trafficking. And if that is the case, they will then be given leave here to remain temporarily for a year whilst they sort themselves out. So it does seem that they will be treated as victims of trafficking and not as illegal entrants per se.
Because the government is, at the moment, wanting to put out a tough line on countering immigration. It's cracking down on the benefits. It's saying it's going to target those trafficking them. But is there a contradiction there in the way that they treat these cases?
Well, what's interesting is that we do have a very tough line on immigration. This government is pursuing cutting down net migration. We have Fortress Europe. The whole of the EU has spent millions of pounds trying to prevent illegal migration. Has it worked? Does this stop people coming into this country? And as this unfortunate case demonstrates, desperate people will take desperate measures to enter the country legally or illegally. So if the legal routes are closed, sadly, this plays into the hands of criminal gangs, such as what we suspect is happening here.
So do we need to do more to tackle the kinds of gangs that are trafficking these people?
Absolutely. There needs to be a serious focus on that. From our experience at JCWI, we are seeing on a regular basis people who are coming to us who have been trafficked. That is on the increase, certainly. It doesn't make the headlines and it's individuals, but trafficking is a serious problem and the government is taking measures to tackle it, but it really does need to focus on it.
Given the tough measures that the government is taking, the rhetoric that we've been hearing, the government attempting to reduce overall net migration, why are we still seeing an increase in cases like this?
Well, that's a very interesting question, and I think that does go back to Britain's role in history. Britain has, these are non-EU countries we're talking about, you know, during colonial times we have been in these countries, and of course in the 50s and the 60s, post the Second World War, we encouraged waves of migrants to come here, to build our infrastructure, to build our hospitals, to service them. So there are established communities from the Indian subcontinent, from Africa, from the Caribbean. People speak the language, and Britain is seen as a fair opportunity. If people come, whether it's an economic
opportunity
reasons,
or a soft touch?
Not a soft touch at all. I mean, that's the message the government has been clearly giving, but a fair opportunity in the sense that if you're fleeing persecution, then people will be granted asylum if they are genuinely fleeing persecution. We are seen as fair, tolerant, understanding. In terms of economic migration, people come here because they feel they can better their lives, and if they work hard, they contribute, they will be justly rewarded. Now, that is not what this government wants. This government wants to cut migration down to tens of thousands, even though it knows it has failed in that. But that message hasn't, I suppose, permeated out. So we are seeing a situation where people will still choose to come to Britain for the reasons I've outlined, for the links they have with this country and the language, etc. But if they can't come here legally, because we don't want low-skilled workers, we only want the best and the brightest, they will come here illegally.
Given how desperate people such as those we've seen at Tilbury are, do you think it's right that the government is making it so difficult for people to stay in this country unless they can? I mean, these people would be deemed illegal, they wouldn't be allowed to work. Do you think that, you saying that the country has a reputation for being fair, do you think that's fair?
Well, this is a very complex question, and I suppose a simple answer would be no. I don't think our immigration policies are fair, I don't think they're correct, and I don't think they will alleviate these sort of problems. What we will find is that people who are desperate to come here will come, and we are playing into the gangs, into the hands of the gang masters by having such a tough stance.
Okay. Saira Grant, many thanks for joining us. It's 18 minutes past 1, the latest headlines on BBC News. David Cameron warns that Islamic State militants in Iraq could grow